The next portion of the event is going to be our keynote speaker, Sujatha Gadkar Wilcox. Sujatha Gadkar Wilcox is chair of the Department of Justice and Law and associate professor of legal studies at Quinnipiac University. She is also executive director of the Oxford Consortium for Human Rights and a Fulbright Nehru Scholar. Sujatha was recently appointed by Governor Ned Lamont to serve as a commissioner on the Commission of Human Rights and Opportunities in Connecticut. Sujatha teaches courses in comparative constitutional law, public international law, human rights law, and introduction to law, among many other subjects. What can't she do? Sujatha has worked with students to implement principles of community action planning in the local community and has organized human rights workshops at the United Nations and Oxford University. Please join me in welcoming Sujatha Gadkar Wilcox to the stage for our keynote speech.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Evening. So first, let me express my gratitude for being asked to speak with you today. Special thank you to Mr. Ajay Ghosh over there. Thank you so much, Ajay, for inviting me to come, and also for all that you do to meet the highest standards of journalistic integrity and rigor in your work. So thank you so much. So I'm so honored to join this annual gathering of the Indo-American Press Club. It's a particular honor for me because I feel connected to this community and this work for two reasons. First, as a child of Indian immigrants, I see the world through a kind of duality of cultures. Culturally, my values reflect a South Asian immigrant household that recognizes the role of education in breaking down barriers, the role of communities in uplifting the individual, and the centrality of family in the background of every personal and professional opportunity. My values also reflect a commitment to democracy, equality, and justice that come from my lifelong engagement with the United States Constitution. In addition, as a scholar of constitutionalism and democracy, I know the importance of journalism in providing free and open communication and fair and unbiased information that's required to maintain a meaningful democracy. The great American philosopher John Dewey reminds us that democracy is more than just a form of government. It is a way of life. Democracy requires an investment in the tools that enable individuals and communities to enhance democratic qualities, habits, and attitudes. It requires the ability to communicate across differences, reconsider your own positions when evidence challenges those presumptions, and to build an ethic of engaged democratic practice and social action. Journalists provide the foundations of that democratic culture by enabling facts to be presented, truths to be told, and vulnerabilities to be exposed. And you all, particularly this group, you bring a particularly unique voice to this work, as I have learned that I bring that same voice to public life because you live in this duality as well. You understand both global and local perspectives, and you bring that intersectionality to life in your stories. Thank you for all that you do to help strengthen our democracy just by going to work every day. Allow me to tell you a little about myself. First and foremost, I am the product of the American dream. My father grew up in a small village in India, it's just south of Goa. He arrived in the US in 1969 with $7 in his pocket. A story not unfamiliar to many, some in the audience, right? And to many immigrants. He worked his way up to a career in engineering that had him designing parts on the space shuttle. He came to the United States in search of opportunity and with hope for a bright future for his family. I was born on the 4th of July in New York City. On July 3rd, my mother brought my grandfather before I was going to be born, to the Statue of Liberty, our national symbol of freedom and friendship between nations. So after she climbed all those steps, it's not surprising that I was born on the next day, 4th of July. I went to exceptional public schools, and then I took on quite a significant amount of loans to be able to go to 2 Ivy League schools. Those schools provided me, as they do with many children of immigrants, access to a new network of scholars and practitioners. This enabled me to eventually become a professor of law and the executive director of the Oxford Consortium for Human Rights, where I have been able to create new opportunities for students who, while at the top of their class, lack the resources to become a part of this kind of global network of scholars and peers. I can see the impact of these opportunities and what they have meant to so many students. And I know that my voice is particularly unique every time a young South Asian woman comes to me and says that she sees herself and her struggles in my story. I took out those loans so that I could open these opportunities, I could open these doors for myself to be in a position to help the next generation of students connect with community partners, local organizations, and state agencies to strengthen democracy and improve human rights in Connecticut, in the United States, and in the world. I took on that burden to help all communities, including the next generation of South Asians, rise. In fact, I take great pride in seeing my own family, particularly my younger cousin Disha, using her own voice as a South Asian sports journalist. That is the immigrant story. That is the story of the United States, and that's what makes this country great. My parents and grandparents understood the United States to be a land of opportunity, a place where diverse voices and educated minds come together to deliberate the best possibilities for everyone. However, we're at a moment of profound political crisis, which threatens not only the opportunities available to all communities, but the democratic principles on which the American imagination is based. As a constitutional scholar, I see cornerstone principles of our Constitution crumbling before our eyes. I think now, perhaps more than ever, we need to actively engage as a community to preserve fundamental ideals. This is where journalism, perhaps more than any other profession, can and has done the heavy lifting to safeguard our democracy. When it comes to the vulnerabilities that local communities face, those problems are often masked by powerful interests and powerful lobbies seeking to maintain the status quo. And it's even more important when newsrooms and newspapers are being shut down every day. Independent journalism is the only way that people will come to understand how and why there has been a rise in poverty since the pandemic, that we have widened the health gap, the wage gap, the gender gap, all as a product of the limits and flaws in our current social, economic, and legal systems. Through the exposure of stories that reflect how systems operate, the public is better informed and better educated. Last year, I moderated a panel for our annual Global Justice Conference at Yale, which is a partnership between Yale University and Quinnipiac University. That panel involved a discussion with former third-party presidential candidate Ralph Nader, who started his public career by going after the automobile industry, by critiquing auto manufacturers and demanding improved safety standards and policies for public welfare. He said that it took him 9 years to get a congressional hearing, and that he was eventually granted a hearing mostly because an independent news reporter broke the story of the auto manufacturing companies threatening and surveilling him. That story led to national change in auto safety policies in the United States. There are so many national stories that make visible the kind of injustices that powerful interests may be trying to hide. And there are local stories as well. Stories of corruption, discriminatory treatment, and of potential threats to public welfare. And those stories collectively help change flawed systems. They help mobilize communities to advocate for those changes. Journalism also provides us an opportunity to strengthen human rights by strengthening our democracy. Human rights depends on democratic engagement, on communities coming together at the local level to support each other, to understand each other across differences, to engage in public dialogue about the policies that will best move communities forward. Journalism educates. It helps people relate to one another, and it brings together those who may be different, but who can advocate for a common cause. On the occasion of his 80th birthday in 1939, John Dewey wrote that the task of democracy is forever that of creation of a freer, more human experience in which we all share and to which we all contribute. More than 80 years later, his insights are even more essential for us today. I think we've learned that engagement and education in current affairs is not optional. It's critical to our survival. When information is written by robots, filtered through algorithms, and manipulated by the interests of powerful corporations and lobbies, democracy is under attack. Free and fair communication is the only way to maintain a meaningful democracy. And a meaningful democracy is the only way to strengthen human rights. You are all defenders of human rights and democracy. Let me end with a reference to a figure many of you are already familiar with. I try to bring his name before my own students and global audiences because he has been such an inspirational voice for so many, particularly for those facing different kinds of oppression. His focus on building a critical consciousness through education is exactly what you do as journalists. I'm writing a book about his unique voice in drafting the Constitution of India, and I again thank you for using yours in your profession. Okay. In the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, coming as I do from the lowest order of Hindu society, I know what is the value of education. The problem of raising the lower order is deemed to be economic. That is a great mistake. The problem of raising the lower order in India is not to feed them, to clothe them, and to make them serve the higher classes, as is the ancient ideal of this country. The problem of the lower order is to remove from them that inferiority complex which has stunted their growth and made them slaves to others. To create in them a consciousness of the significance of their lives for themselves and for the country, of which they have been cruelly robbed by the existing social order. Thank you for helping us maintain that commitment to democracy and human rights, and thank you for educating the public. Thank you very much.